Welcome, everyone. My name is Kevin Fulmer, and this edition of Paws Pivot is about using the entrepreneurial mindset to solve problems and discover opportunities. I am the director of the Alex Brown Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation here at UMBC, and today we're going to hopefully have you maybe think a little differently and certainly think about entrepreneurship a little differently. And a quote I love to use in my classes when I teach the entrepreneurial mindset, and really it's my overall teaching philosophy, is one by Socrates, who says, "I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think." So again, today, hopefully, I'm going to get you to maybe think a little differently and how you can apply some entrepreneurial mindset principles and ideas to solving problems, which at the end of the day is what entrepreneurship is about. So another quote from Peter Drucker, who was a renowned consultant, management consultant, business consultant, and wrote a book, Innovation and Leadership, says, "Most of what you hear about entrepreneurship is all wrong. It's not magic, it's not mysterious, and it has nothing to do with genes. It's a discipline, and like any discipline, it can be learned." And we believe that. That's what we do here at UMBC, and that's what I spend a lot of time doing, just trying to get people to think about entrepreneurship a little different. Typically, we think about entrepreneurship and we think about venture creation, starting companies or organizations. And while sometimes it leads to that, really, it's not just about venture creation. So today, while we will talk about things that can help with venture creation, we're really going to talk about entrepreneurship in a much different way, maybe than what you're used to hearing about. So I have a question for you, and obviously I can't get feedback, but I just want you to think about this for a minute and think about why we do things the way we do them, whether it's systems or processes that you experience in the workplace or just in life in general. Why do we do them that way? And the reality is, in many cases, we do them because that's the way we've always done them. So there isn't really ever any kind of inclination or thinking about, is there a better way? It's, we do it because that's the way we've always done it, no matter if there are better ways to do it, if there are new technologies to use. We just get stuck in these old ways. And this way of thinking is left brain, and we're going to talk about left brain, right brain in a minute. It's very logical oriented thinking, but it will never lead to change or innovative breakthroughs. So another quote I love is from Ed Catmull, who was the founder with Steve Jobs of Pixar Animation. And he wrote a book called Creativity, Inc., which is a great book. And he says, "You'll never stumble upon the unexpected if you stick only to the familiar." So these old ways of doing things and doing things the same way that we've always done them will not lead to innovative breakthroughs and the unexpected. So at the end of the day, entrepreneurship always leads to problem solving. Fundamentally, entrepreneurship is about solving problems. Businesses don't get created, new solutions don't happen unless they're solving problems. And problems are all around us that need solving, in our workplaces, in our volunteer organizations, within our families. And so we want to make sure that we have that kind of mindset and that focus around entrepreneurship. So I want you to take a few seconds and think of a current problem or situation that you're working on. And it could be from anywhere. And I just want you to write it down, focusing on describing the problem to be solved. And make sure you're not starting with the solution. And that's because that's typically what entrepreneurs do. I meet with entrepreneurs literally every week that have these ideas and want help. And they typically 90% of the time or more start with the solution. Here's this app that I want to develop. Here's this idea that I have to do whatever, versus starting with the solution, or the problem rather. So take a moment, think of a problem. We'll come back to that a little bit later. So we also believe that entrepreneurship is a life skill. It's about identifying opportunities. Like I said, it's about solving problems ultimately. And it's about approaching problems in a specific way, adapting to new conditions. These are skills that can be developed and applied to any field or any problem. So it's not necessarily about venture creation. If you're working inside an organization, there are plenty of problems to be solved, or or new opportunities to be discovered. And that's what using the entrepreneurial mindset is really about. And so when we think about these skills, these are not soft skills, although that's what they're referred to a lot of time in the workplace, in the world. We call them essential skills. And they're things like, you can see the list here, I won't go into all of them, but design thinking, which we're going to talk about, right brain balance, which we'll cover, things like creativity, empathy, design, problem identification. And getting gritty is not highlighted, but here at UMBC, grit is kind of one of our mantras. And it's actually, as you see there, it matters more than IQ as a determiner for success. So that ability to just kind of do what it takes, make it happen mindset, and perseverance is really important in terms of success. And then the last one there, curiosity, is something that I don't think gets talked about enough, but it is just a huge determiner in terms of being able to come up with unique, innovative solutions to things, just being able to see the world around you differently and being aware of it, and doing research when you see something, asking those questions. I wonder if there's a better solution. And fortunately, we now all carry a computer around in our pockets and purses, and it's just easy to do a quick search to really discover if there are ways in which that problem that you've identified are being solved. So curiosity is really powerful. But why is the mindset important? Well, having a good idea isn't enough. We need to know if it's really an opportunity. And how do you know that? And to what extent? Because not every idea is an opportunity. Opportunities solve problems in a value-added, differentiated way. One of the things you need to understand is anytime that there's a problem that you've identified, it's not a new problem. There are no new problems. There are only new solutions. And so in understanding a potential solution as an opportunity, it has to be differentiated, because if there are no new problems, that means there are current solutions. And in order to get somebody to adopt your solution, your new solution, they have to switch from the current solution. So it has to be value added. People have to say, this is my current solution, and you're offering me a better solution, and yes, I will switch. And if that doesn't happen, then there's really not an opportunity. And this new idea can be a product, it could be a new process, it could be a new market, it could be a lot of different things. And it can be done in any setting, not just thinking about starting a new business. It could be in the workplace. Employers need employees who can solve problems, who can think critically and come up with solutions, and not just accept the status quo. And then sometimes the solution might result in creating a venture, but often not. Like I said, inside companies or even research that has social impact that can be used to solve social problems that might not end up starting a venture, but it might be. And it could be a nonprofit type social impact venture, which are entrepreneurial. And entrepreneurship in this nonprofit world is super important. So, as I said, employers, it's important for them to have employees that have this mindset, because studies show that they're saying technical skills are no longer enough. In a 2021 review of more than 80 million job postings across 22 industry sectors, it was found that almost 2/3 of the position listed soft skills among their qualifications. 70% of the most in-demand skills were those soft skills, things like were on the list previously: communication, problem solving, planning, thinking critically. And soft skills were the most desired qualifications for 91% of management jobs, 86% of business operation jobs, and 81% of engineering jobs. And you think engineering jobs particularly, well, it's the technical skills, right? No, employers are saying, and our students are coming back from interviews saying, I expected all these technical questions, and they're asking me about how I work well with teams and how I think and process information. And so employers are saying, we can teach the technical skills, we can't teach these soft skills. And even if you learn the technical skills in school, we're going to teach you how to apply them to the actual work that we're going to have you do. So one of the books in my mindset class that we go through is a book called A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink. And the subtitle you see there, why right brainers will rule the future. And so you think, well, right brainers, what does that mean? And many of you probably are aware that we have two hemispheres of the brain, a left and a right. And the left brain, they're contralateral, meaning the left brain controls the right side of the body, and conversely, the right brain controls the left side of the body. But in addition, we found out not really that long ago, just since the invention of the functional MRI, that those two centers or those two hemispheres actually control other things too. And we know now that the left brain is the logical side. It helps us think sequentially and logically through things. It also is the center of all of our communication, our verbal skills, talking, reading, writing, and things like math, science. All of our K through 12 education has been focused on developing that left brain by basically kind of pouring information, pouring knowledge into that, because it kind of serves as our cloud storage way before there was actual cloud storage technology. And so that's our recall. Those are our experiences are all housed there. Conversely, the right side of the brain is the holistic kind of thinking, and where the holistic thinking comes from. It's our ability to see the big picture, our creativity, the arts, music, those things happen in the right side of the brain. And so back to the book, you say, okay, why will right brainers rule the future? Well, and there's a lot of reasons he goes into, but basically that these left brain skills, these analytical skills, things like accountants and computer programmers, things like that, in the conceptual age, those things are just becoming more and more prevalent, right? The world is shrinking. And so it's the ability then to take the right brain elements and combine them with those left brain skills to really then come up with something different and innovative and unique. And so he uses a book by Betty Edwards called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain to really make this point. And a quote by Betty Edwards is, "Drawing is not really very difficult. Seeing is the problem." And she illustrates this through an exercise that she has people go through by presenting this image of a man sitting in a chair, wearing a suit, wearing glasses, and she asks the folks to draw it, right? And typically what happens is that we immediately go into this left brain mode of thinking about how we would construct this. And we think about, well, what does a man wearing a suit, wearing glasses look like? And we start somewhere, got a tie in a chair, and we start drawing, and we probably typically come up with, or I know I would come up with something that looks like this, that is somewhat similar, but clearly not a great replication of the original drawing. And then she has people go through an exercise where she presents this picture, which you could tell enough that it's the same picture, but it's upside down. And she doesn't turn it right side up. She just says, draw what's in front of you. And you can see that it doesn't necessarily look like a man in a chair, but it's there. So our left brain doesn't immediately go to, well, it's a chair and I got to draw a man. And we just see an image. We see lines. We see, formations. And when we draw that, typically, this is when you flip it right side up after drawing it upside down, we get something that's more similar to this, which, as you can see, it's much closer to the original picture. And so back to the other point, how you see is what you see. So it's the same thing with problem solution orientation. We see problems and develop solutions based on what we know. That left brain, those experiences, our logic, and this is not innovative. And so we need to kind of get out of that flow, that methodology, in order to have new, better solutions. So breakthroughs happen when we develop the ability to quiet the left side of the brain to what we think is the reality. And so the right brain can come up with better solutions. So how do we do that? Well, Pink in his book talks about 6 senses that are important to develop, and they can be developed in order to do that. And they're design, story, symphony, empathy, play, and meaning. So we're not going to go through all of those, but they are fundamental human abilities that everyone can master. here's the pictures, right? So you get this picture originally, you say draw it. Our brain, like I said, thinks about what these things look like. That's typically what the image result is. Then we're asked to draw it upside down, and we don't think about what it looks like. We just see the lines and the figures and so forth, and we get something that's closer to the original image. So I won't go all the way back to everything, but at least that you could see that in action there. So the six senses, let's talk about design. So design, our brains tend to go to something visual, something like graphic design. And that is a piece of design, but it's really, at the end of the day, a combination of utility and significance. So it's the functionality of whatever we're designing, again, solution orientation, and the significance, the beauty of it, the artistic nature of it. And so Pink says, in this age that we're in of material abundance, meaning we have more of everything than we've ever had, design has become really crucial and as a way to differentiate and create new markets. And just as an example of just the abundance that we have now, the United States spends more on trash bags, not the trash and taking out, just the bags, than 90 other countries spend on everything. So another example of design is, you think about a BMW, and it certainly has a design element to it, but they see it as not making automobiles, they're making moving works of art that expresses the driver's love of quality. And so design in its simplest form is the activity of creating solutions. So one of the other six senses is symphony, and symphony is essentially the ability to put the pieces together, to see the bigger picture. It's the capacity to synthesize rather than analyze, to be able to see relationships between sometimes seemingly unrelated fields or ideas. The ability to detect broader patterns rather than delivering specific answers, and to come up with something new by combining elements nobody else thought to bring together. And so when the left brain knows what the right brain is doing, doesn't know rather, it frees the mind to see kind of relationships that you wouldn't otherwise see and integrate them as a whole. So the key here is to risk that those unconventional thoughts, like this shouldn't go with this, but could it go with that, and could it be a better solution? Because convention is the enemy of progress. And so I don't know if anyone knows how Velcro was invented, but it really was using this principle. It was invented by a Swiss engineer who was out walking his dog, and the dog would get near these sticker bushes and get these burrs stuck to him. And so he thought, is there a way to use this in a broader sense, right? And so when he really analyzed the burrs and the fur, he found these, this hook and loop type of function, and that's essentially what Velcro is. One side is more of a hook, and one side is a loop, and he ended up patenting that way back in the mid-50s. A great quote around symphony that I love that illustrates the point as well is that the guy who invented the wheel was an idiot, but the guy who invented the other three was a genius. So one wheel, not real useful, interesting, has movement, but four wheels and some axles and a platform, and now we have transportation. So the number one reason why really products fail, but also ideas fail, I give you a moment to think about it. Everybody wants to say, well, not enough money, at least in terms of why products fail, bad team, et cetera. But at the end of the day, the number one reason businesses or products and ideas fail is that we waste needless time, money, and effort building the wrong product or working on the wrong solution when it's an idea. And so how does that happen? It basically happens because people don't understand who it is that they're building for. So the customer or stakeholder, somebody that's going to be using the product, using the service, they don't spend any time really understanding it. So that's really important before you start with a solution, is that you understand the problem from the person that has the problem's perspective. And sometimes that's a customer, it could be in a company, could be the stakeholder. So who are you developing the solution for, and have you really talked to them about the problem and their current solutions? So we want to understand the problem better than anyone. Well, how do we do that? We use a process. The best way is through a process called human-centered design or design thinking. And a quote by the editor in residence of the Stanford Design School says, in order to get to new solutions, you have to get to know different people, different scenarios, and different places. Human-centered designers must start from that place of not thinking they know the answer, not immediately going to that left brain logical place, but understanding what the problem is that they're looking to solve. And until you talk to the people to have the problem, you're making a lot of assumptions. And again, that's something that I talk to people a lot about, is validating your assumptions. So what are those top 2, 3, 4 assumptions that you're making that if you're wrong about them, you don't have anything. You don't have a solution, let alone a product, service, or business. We also refer to this idea of design thinking or human-centered design as empathy, and it's essential in terms of the solution design. So good designers put themselves in the mind of that person that are going to use the product or service, as I said. And so we use empathy to find innovative solutions and validate those ideas as true opportunities through that customer discovery process. Interestingly, Einstein kind of thought this way. He says, if I had a problem to solve, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. And so it's not only to the point of really focusing on the problem, but if you do that, and have that kind of ratio, it won't take long to come up with the solution versus immediately going to the solution and then having it fail. So how do we actually put this in action? So remember back to that current problem or situation you're working on. I would encourage you to take some time and think about who you're solving it for. Write down the stakeholder or the potential customer, and then think about 3 people that are actually experiencing that and that are impacted, that might be impacted by your new solution that you haven't talked to, that you should, to better understand it, and go talk to them. And then what are the 2 assumptions you're making and thinking about whatever solution you're already thinking about, because I'm confident that you are. But what are those 2 assumptions that you should validate by talking to those people? Another little exercise you can go through is, what is something, either a process or some type of program and methodology maybe that you've been doing just because you've been accepted that that's the way to do it. You were told, here's how we do this. Even though there has to be a better way, so that you're doing it even though it's frustrating, even though it doesn't make sense, and there's got to be a better way. And then explore that with the slide before and those action steps. So in summary, I would just encourage you to love the problem, not your solution. Talk to those key stakeholders that have the problem you're working on a solution for. Tap into the right brain. It's not that the left brain isn't useful anymore, but it's really about a combination, because the left brain will be there. That's our experience. That's our logic. That's where we initially go to. But having that right brain balance is really important. Validate and test your assumptions. And I always finish with make it happen. And I'll leave you with one more quote and takeaway that says, successful people get to where they are by taking a non-conventional approach to books, technology, and everything around them. Though disregarding the accepted norms is the secret to innovation, to momentous successes in changing the world. And here's my email. If I can be of any help or answer any questions that you might have, happy to do that. And then, of course, here's the survey that we'd love you to fill out. But thank you for attending. Sorry for the confusion there with the early slides. But
yeah, thank you so much, Kevin.
Take questions or
yeah, if folks want to throw any questions in the chat, feel free to right now. But just wanted to say thank you, Kevin, so much. That was an awesome session. Even without the slides, I was still able to kind of follow along. It's better to know when he said see here, now we can see it. So for anyone who is here, we send out a recording and the slide deck. So you will be able to get the slide deck and see exactly what Kevin was talking about. The QR code on the screen is for the exit survey. It lets us know whether or not these webinars are helpful for you all and what subject matters we need to be covering. The URL is also in the chat for anybody who wants to click and fill it out there. Pause and Pivot webinars are every Wednesday, 12 to 12:30 p.m. So we'll be back here next week with another star-studded cast of UMBC faculty. And we just want to, again, say thank you to Kevin. Everybody enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you once again, Kevin, and you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Rex.